The uninvited guests. The stale scent of old sweat and cheap cologne clung to the empty dressing room, a stark contrast to the glittering spectacle Dean had just left. He was still humming the last bars of My Way when the door swung open, revealing two men in ill-fitting suits. They moved with an unsettling efficiency, one shutting the door with a soft click, the other pulling up a folding chair opposite Dean's vanity. Mr. Maxwell, the first one, a hawk-nosed man with eyes that missed nothing, began without preamble. He slid a thick manila folder across the chipped laminate tabletop. Dean didn't even glance at it, instead picking up a stray sequin from his jacket. Dean Maxwell, owner of half the major casinos on the Strip, the man whose name graced billboards and whose private jet was a familiar sight above McCarran, had built an empire on charm, shrewd deals, and an uncanny ability to know exactly who to call. His connections ran deeper than the neon glow of Vegas, stretching into boardrooms and back alleys, touching families whose names evoked both respect and fear. The whispers of federal scrutiny had been a low hum for months, though he'd dismissed them as background noise, the usual static that accompanied ambition. 18 months, he'd heard, they'd been building their case. 18 months of sifting through a lifetime. The second agent, younger and with a nervous energy that belied his stoic facade, cleared his throat. "We have photographs, Mr. Maxwell. Extensive documentation. Your associates, Mr. Santoro, Mr. Moretti, the Galante family." He pushed a few glossy prints forward, images of Dean at various events, always with a smile, always shaking hands. The smiles in the photos were genuine, the men next to him less so. The sheer volume of evidence suggests a pattern, a systemic collaboration that goes far beyond casual acquaintance. "We can and will dismantle everything you've built. Every casino, every investment, every public appearance will be under the microscope. We'll freeze your assets, revoke your licenses, and ensure you spend the rest of your days fighting a losing battle in courtrooms, your legacy reduced to a footnote in federal indictments." The hawk-nosed agent leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "Unless, of course, you help us dismantle their operations. We need a man on the inside. You have 48 hours to decide. Your career, your reputation, your freedom, it's all on the line." Dean slowly lit a cigarette, the flare of the match illuminating the faint scar above his eyebrow. He took a long drag, the smoke curling around his perfectly coiffed hair. He leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Is that everything?" The agents exchanged a glance, a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. Dean exhaled a plume of smoke. "Because if it is," he said, his voice a silken purr, "then you gentlemen clearly don't understand the meaning of leverage when it comes to the people you're asking me to betray." The silence that followed was thick, punctuated only by the distant thrum of the casino. The agents left minutes later, their manila folder untouched. 3 weeks later, the whispers about the federal case against Dean Maxwell evaporated entirely. Dean never missed a show. What he understood more than any career prosecutor he had was that the families they feared had a longer reach and a far more persuasive way of ensuring loyalty than any federal witness protection program. What he'd actually said, in the quiet of that dressing room, was, "You think I'm afraid of your courts? Try explaining to Don Moretti why I wore a wire." The King of Vegas. The door to Dean's private dressing room, usually bustling with stylists and stagehands, stood ajar, revealing two silhouettes in the dim light. He'd just finished his third encore, the roar of the Strip still echoing in his ears. "Gentlemen, join you." Dean crooned, not bothering to turn from the mirror as he dabbed a towel at his brow. "I believe my schedule showed a solo cool-down, not a committee meeting." Special Agent Miller, a man whose suit looked like it had been surgically applied, stepped inside, followed by his partner, Agent Davies, whose eyes scanned the opulent room with an almost clinical disdain. Miller slid a thin manila folder across the polished mahogany table. Dean didn't even glance at it. He was the King of Vegas, a title earned not just through sold-out shows and platinum records, but through a web of intricate alliances with old money, new money, and the kind of money that preferred to stay in the shadows. The FBI had been building a case against him for 18 months, a whisper campaign that had grown into a dull throb in the city's underbelly. But Dean had always been a step ahead, his charisma a shield, his connections an impenetrable fortress. Miller cleared his throat. Mr. Martin, we have reason to believe your entertainment empire is built on less than legitimate foundations. Davies, silent until now, flipped open the folder, revealing glossy photographs. Dean in a dimly lit back room shaking hands with a known Chicago outfit enforcer. Dean laughing with a consigliere from the East Coast. Dean at a charity gala, exchanging a knowing glance with a family patriarch whose name was synonymous with illicit gambling. These, Mr. Martin, suggest a pattern, Davies continued, his voice devoid of emotion. A pattern that, if revealed, would not only destroy your career but dismantle everything you've built. Miller leaned forward, the scent of his expensive cologne filling the room. We're offering you a way out. Cooperate, but you come an informant. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. You have 48 hours to decide. Dean finally turned. His eyes, usually sparkling with mischievous charm, now held a dangerous glint. He pulled a silver cigarette case from his jacket, selected a filtered smoke and lit it with a practiced flicks of a lighter. A plume of fragrant smoke curled towards the ceiling. He leaned back against the vanity, a slow smile spreading across his face. Is that everything? He asked, his voice a low rumble that vibrated with an unexpected power. He took a long drag. Because I know who your daughter calls when she needs a fix, Agent Miller. The agent stood frozen, their carefully constructed authority crumbling around them. Miller's jaw tightened, his face draining of colour. Davies averted his gaze, a flicker of fear in his eyes. Dean watched them, a silent predator observing trapped prey. He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. He simply held their stares, letting the implications sink in. The agents left moments later. Their departure as quiet as their arrival, the manila folder left untouched on the table. 3 weeks later, the FBI's investigation into Dean Martin mysteriously closed, citing insufficient evidence. Dean never missed a single show. He'd understood that leverage wasn't just about what you could prove, but what you knew about the men trying to prove it. He understood human nature far better than any career prosecutor. A gallery of shadows. The stale scent of grease paint and desperation clung to the air in the empty dressing room. Dean, still in the tailored vest and loosened tie from his last illusion, felt the cold weight of the metal folding chair beneath him. Across the scarred laminate table, 2 men in identical charcoal suits sat like a pair of well-fed vultures. One, with eyes that seemed to catalogue every thread of Dean's expensive silk shirt, slid a thick manila folder across the table. Dean didn't even glance at it. He was more interested in the way the fluorescent light caught the dust motes dancing in the air, a silent ballet playing out above their grim faces. Dean's Vegas empire wasn't built on tricks of the hand, but on a meticulous understanding of human desire and an uncanny ability to connect the dots. The Golden Mirage, his flagship casino, hummed with a constant current of high stakes and higher expectations. He had cultivated relationships with families whose names echoed in the whispers of power brokers, not just in Nevada, but across the globe. He knew the FBI had been building a case for 18 months, a slow, methodical accumulation of shadows attempting to define his light.